All right, here's a good question. The question says or they want you to solve this equation. So they want to know what values of x you can plug in here, and you have to plug in the same value for each one, so that the answer comes out to something that's less than 0. Now, this one has three factors, or three zeros. So there's one, and there's one. So when you're doing this question, what you need to do is separate your x-axis into intervals. So I have one interval that'll be with this factor, another one with this one, and another one with that one. So let's start with the first one. So I want to know when 3x, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to set it equal to 0. I'm remembering that it's less than, but I just want to find a point where something happens. Divide both sides by 3, you get x is equal to 0. So at an x value of 0, something happens with the graph. So to the left or to the right, it could be higher or lower than the graph. Let's try the next one. So x plus 16 is equal to 0, so x is minus 16. So at minus 16, let's say 5, 10, 15. So about minus 16 right there, again, something happens. And then the last one, of course, will be x equals 5, 10, 15, positive 16, something happens there. So my graph for part of this is going to be above the axis, part of it's going to be below. So I want to sort of know, in this interval from here, from negative infinity all the way up to negative 16, where is the graph? It can't be on both sides of the axis, because these are the only zeros or the only places that it can cross. So what I need to do is find somewhere over here and just find an x value and determine what the y value is and see if it's going to be positive or negative. Then I'm going to do the same thing from negative 16 all the way to 0. And I'm using 0 because that was one of my interval points. So is the graph above the axis or is it below the axis? And I want to know what it is in that interval. Same thing from 0 to positive 16 in this interval, right to there. And the same thing from positive 16 up to infinity. So I want to know where the graph is in each one of those intervals. So interval 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now the intervals that will be solutions to my graph are the ones that are less than 0. So the ones that are below the axis. So if it's below the axis or a negative number, then that's a solution. If it's above the axis up here or a positive number, we don't want that interval. I don't know if that's going to be what it looks like, but we'll see. So what I do is I pick any number that's in that interval. So from negative infinity up to negative 16, let's pick, say, negative 20. It's a nice number. So I'll take my equation up here. So it's 3x, x plus 16, x minus 16. And I put in a negative 20 everywhere there's an x. Okay, negative 20 plus 16 and negative 20 minus 16. 3 times minus 20 is minus 60. Minus 20 plus 16 is a negative 4. Negative 20 minus 16 is negative 36. If you're timesing these, two negatives will be a positive, but I'll be stuck with a negative. I don't really care what the number is. It's a big number, but I know that it's going to be negative, so it's going to be below the axis. It's be way down there somewhere, below the axis, but that's what I want. I want something less than 0. So that interval, that first interval, I want that one. So as part of my answer, I would say the answer is everywhere from negative infinity up to negative 16, that's going to be part of the solution. You pick any number in that interval, and it'll come up with a negative number. Okay, I'm betting interval 2 is going to be above, but we can test that with any number. Let's like pick 5. So this was interval 1. Let's do interval 2. Interval 2, we'll do it in red. So it'll be 3 times negative 5. That's the number I picked. Negative 5 plus 16. Negative 5 minus 16. This would be negative 15. This would be positive 11. this would be negative 21. Two negatives make a positive, so this would be positive. So in this interval, the graph is above the axis somewhere. And I think it probably goes something like that. So, but I don't want that one because it's greater than 0. So that interval from negative 16 to 0, I don't want that interval. That's no good. All right, I'm betting the 3 is going to come down. But let's try. Let's pick another number. Let's pick a positive 5. Okay, so positive 5. So for interval 3, I put in a positive 5 everywhere I see an x. 5 plus 16, 5 minus 16. So this would be 15, this would be 21, this would be negative 11. Multiply, I'm coming up with a negative number, which is less than 0. That's what I want. That interval, that's in. I like that interval. So anywhere from, for that interval, will be from 0 to 16. Any of those numbers are going to work. I'm not going to include those numbers because this sign up here is just a less than. If it were a less than an equal sign, I'd put square brackets around these. But since it's not, I'm just putting the curly ones. Okay, so the graph comes down like this, and I'll bet it's going to come up like that. I'm betting interval 4 is going to be positive, which I don't want. But let's try a number. A number up here like 20. Let's try 20. So 3 times 20, 20 plus 16, 20 minus 16, 3, that's 60. This is 36. This is 4. All those are positive, so my answer would be positive. That's greater than 0. It doesn't match what I'm saying here, so I don't want any part of that interval there. So my answer then is this interval and that interval. So at the end, I would probably write something like this for my answer. I'd say the interval is from negative infinity to negative 16, not comma, sorry, union with this interval, 0 to 16. So those two intervals satisfy that original equation. All right, hopefully that helps you with that, the inequality polynomial solving.